Hey everyone, it's Rick Theriault, your Maine Real Estate Guide, and today I'm on location here at my homestead here in Millinocket, Maine. And I thought I'd bring you a little spring update. I had a comment the other day from a viewer that noticed the solar array behind me and asked a couple of questions. So I thought I'd talk a little bit more detail about that project and how it came about and some do's and don'ts, I guess. So let's talk a little more about that. So the solar array that I have here is roughly 3,000 watts of solar panel up there. Not quite. It's like 2,960 or something. Let's call it 3,000. And I have it on a fixed array on the top of a pole, and it's very, very rugged. And I designed it, or I had it designed that way. Consulted with the manufacturer of the rack, and gave it a lot of thought before I ever broke ground on this project. The post that it's on is 10 inches in diameter, and that was one piece of steel, and I think it was, let's see, it's in the ground 6 feet. And it's 15, so it was a 21-foot section of galvanized steel, and that's rebar reinforced concrete that it's in. Prior to doing anything for alternative energy, I read this book over the course of the winter. The Renewable Energy Handbook by William Kemp. I just checked; it's available on Amazon. It's a great book if you're thinking about either grid tied or off-grid alternative energy. Some of the material in there is a little dated, but nonetheless, it's a good resource, especially if you don't really have any electrical background. Now, myself, I went to the University of Maine, and I have a degree in a BS in electrical engineering technology, so I do understand the fundamentals of AC and DC electronics. So that was a bit of a help. So let's go back to this array. So the reason I have it that high is I wanted to be able to drive underneath it and walk underneath it and not bang my head, which I'm able to do. Also, you'll notice that my house sits over here, and I wanted to limit the shading from some of the trees as well as the house on the solar panels, because solar panels, a little bit of shading is bad. Any shading is bad, but a little is almost as bad as a lot. So to eliminate as much of that as possible, I had to get it up as high as possible. You also notice that I did not put my solar panels on my roof. I did that for a couple of reasons. Primary reason is my house is not oriented perfectly for solar. It's just not. Most homes aren't. Also, solar panels, contrary to popular belief or understanding, they work better the cooler they are, and the hottest place on a structure is on the roof, which detracts from the performance of your solar panels. I know you see them all over the place on roofs, and they do work, they just don't work as well. I heard a comment on a radio talk show the other day that kind of set me back, because the fellow that was talking is quite pro alternative energy, but he made a statement that was absolutely wrong. He said solar panels don't work in Maine in February. I get some of the most production I have on a daily basis that I ever do in the month of February, and the reason being it's very cold. There's a lot of snow on the ground. Like right now you don't see it because it's all pretty much melted, but everything in February is white around here, including on my roof. It's mostly white. So you get a lot of reflection from the sun as well as direct from the sun. So on a cold, windy day in February, I produce about 21 or 22 kilowatt hours a day of energy. In that That's the most I ever produce. It's even more than I produce in the summertime, even when the days are longer, and a lot of it has to do with the efficiency of the panels. So my system is it's a hybrid system. It's a grid tied, but also has battery storage. So I have backup power in the event of a power outage. So let's take a look at my inverters. So when I installed this, Outback power systems were probably as good as you could get. They're still being made. They're still a good product. The company is not quite as good as it used to be as far as customer service. So I would probably steer away from Outback going forward, just because of the customer service aspect. But anyway, it's been pretty much a problem-free installation. I did lose one cooling fan about a year into ownership, and these inverters are about 10 years old, and I lost one cooling fan over that 10-year period, and that was a fairly straightforward replacement. I just had to shut the system down and replace the fan. No big deal. But the way this works is, where that metal conduit is, that's where my DC power comes in from my solar array outside. It comes into my garage, and then it comes down in. This device over here is your charge controller, and down below there, this metal conduit goes into that box over there. I know it's hard to see with all my collection of junk here, but in there is my batteries for battery storage. Now, my system has a small battery bank. This is a 48-volt system, and it's a small battery bank because I'm not trying to power my whole house. When I did this, what I wanted to do, my goal was to produce as much electricity as I could, but also have backup power in case of a power outage. And we don't get them very often here, so you gotta keep that in mind. If you're in a place where you have a lot of frequent power outages, maybe you want to have a larger battery bank. But in my case, usually power outages are just a few hours if we have them, and they're fairly infrequent. So what I'm powering with my backup power are my refrigerator, my water, and my abilities to stay warm, heat, and some lighting. But I don't power my electric clothes dryer, my electric washer. I don't power our electric range because I can cook on my grill and stuff. So I'm able to stay warm and clean and hydrated and fed with what I've got going here. So in this system, there's a lot of copper wire to conduct the electricity that is both coming in the form of DC voltage on the input side, and over here, this is where the AC comes out and connects down in my basement where my breaker panel is. So I've got 2-inch conduit that goes all the way from the output of my inverters across my garage, the full length of the garage, and it comes down here where it goes into the basement, and then we'll go down there and I'll show you where it comes across and goes into the breaker box in a bit. But within that 2-inch conduit, there's a lot of copper. There's seven number 4 copper, as well as a bare copper wire, and probably a number 6 for ground. So pulling the wire through there took most of the day, and I had a very skilled electrician giving me a hand and together he and I were able to get the wires pulled in and hooked up down in the basement. And also over here where the let's see here, where the power comes from the solar panels down into this PVC conduit, which goes underground over to where it comes into the garage. Over here, that is there's number 2 copper in there. So there's several hundred feet of large, fairly large size copper conductors in order to minimize my voltage drop over the length of my runs, which are some of the calculations you have to bear in mind when you're doing this sort of thing. You got to size things appropriately, or you're not going to be happy with the results. So we're down in my basement, and this is where that 2-inch metal conduit comes from my garage into my basement space, and then it runs quite a distance, about 30 more feet, to where my breaker panel is. So this is the main breaker panel for my house. Since my system has it's grid tied with battery backup, I had to have a sub panel. So here's the sub panel. So these are the circuits that I keep, that I never lose power. So if the grid goes down, I still have my water, my fans to circulate heat, lighting in one of the bathrooms, my refrigerator, my water pump is on here, and then I just added this outlet, which gives me Wi-Fi. Even when the power's out, I still have communications right there. So alternative energy does give you peace of mind, but you got to do it right. So you want to give it some thought. And if you're looking for backup power with your alternative energy, you want to be sure that if you're talking to an installer, that they understand that there's a lot of installers out there that just do grid tied systems, and throw them on your roof and connect you to the grid, and understand that if you go that route, you don't have backup power ever, because when the grid's down, you're down. But if you want to involve batteries in it, you want to talk to someone that understands off-grid alternative energy, and then can help you appropriately with a system that will perform, produce power, and feed that into the grid when you're not using it, and then also give you backup power when you need it, when everybody else's lights are out. So I guess the takeaway from this little conversation about alternative energy in my system in particular is, if it's something you've been thinking about, do your homework. There's good materials out there. Obtain some of them, read, get a good understanding of what you're doing, and if if the math and stuff is a little beyond your understanding, then work with a licensed professional that understands off-grid alternative energy, because there is a difference between grid-connected and off-grid. My system is a hybrid system, combination of the both, and so I get the best of both worlds, I guess. But I'm pretty pleased with it, and it's been the solar part has been here for, at least 10 years. Time flies, but on a day like today, it's producing very well. I also have can see that up on the... I got that Berge 10 kW wind turbine on a 120-foot tall tower, and that produces a lot of power on a nice windy day like today. That particular item is just grid tied, and so as long as the grid's up, I'm producing power and backfeeding into the grid, which reduces my electric bill. I typically just have to pay for the connection charge. So today, some of the other projects we got going on, if you're interested, we got to clean up some of my pruning. I dug out my wood chipper, and that's a handy device. We'll chip up that pile of brush. But let's head up on the hill, and I'll give you a little pruning lesson. I mentioned the other day that one of the projects I've got to do this year is I got to redo my garden beds. I've got raised beds here that I installed the year after we put this wind turbine up, because I had prior to that, this was all trees. I didn't have any open area at all on my property. It was all wooded. The only open area was around the house. So once we cleared all the trees here, I had space to have a garden. My soil is exceedingly rocky, so raised beds were the answer. I had some of these logs that were on site. These were hemlock logs, and they've been in the ground and holding soil and exposed to the elements for, oh boy, 15, 16 years, more. And they've held up pretty well, but now you can see they're pretty well at the end of their life. So I'm going to dismantle all this over the course of the summer. So I won't have much of a garden this year, but I'll try to get everything ready so next year we can have a nice garden once again. And I'm gonna probably redo these beds with metal. I think that's the route I'm gonna go. The soil's here. I just want to get rid of those logs. What's ended up happening, the logs were a great idea, but if you know anything about voles, that's V-O-L-E, vole. They're a ground-dwelling rodent, and they love to live under these logs and tunnel in my garden beds. And I've got to make raised beds that are a little more vole resistant. They really like beets. I haven't had a beet out of my garden in about 4 years. They grow, they look great, but before we can pull the beets, you go to pull them and they've eaten just about the whole root, except for like the tap root, so the green is still looking great, but the root part is gone. Little buggers. So I'm going to make vole-proof garden beds best we can. But let's talk about this little tree here. This is a replacement pear tree that I planted last year. There used to be a Bartlett tree here that was the same age as this tree, because I bought them at the same time, but it got fire blight and I needed to remove it. So I cut it down and pulled the stump, and then I bought this variety, which is a Vermont pear. It's supposed to be a pretty sweet variety of pear, and so we shall see. But what I need to do is, this is the central leader on the tree, this stem here, and this is where it was pruned back last year, and it's added about 2 feet of growth last year. So what I want to do is reduce that a bit, because what I want to do is force it to grow some branches out instead of just going straight up. And I'm going to do that by trimming it back. So what you want to do, I don't know if you can see that bud right there. You want to pick a bud and cut a nice clean cut just above it. And that should force that. This bud here will go straight up, and these other buds should grow some branches out to the side. That's the hope. And it's also going to slow it down from growing so that the main stem, the trunk, has a chance to put some girth on it before you start bearing fruit, so that it'll support that fruit in the future. You want a nice strong framework. That's what you're trying to develop, is a strong framework. Right? Like here, you got nice heavy branches that support a good crop of fruit. Now this tree here, I haven't had an opportunity to prune at all yet. I'm going to do some of that today. I'm going to show you some of the things that to look for. So this tree here had an infestation last year of woolly aphids. And this is woolly aphid damage right here, where they've eaten through the bark. And so that's kind of diseased wood. So you want to trim that off for sure. And this is, again, this is where it was trimmed back to last year, and it added about 2 feet. So we're going to cut that back. I'll probably trim it back to here. And some of these other branches that need to go, when you prune, you want to eliminate branches that cross others. So I'm going to take this branch right out because it just rubs. And I'm also going to take branches that grow straight up out, like this one. Those are some of the things you want to do. So cut branches that go straight up, or branches that cross others, and branches that have diseased wood. Those are some of the things you want to keep in mind. The other project we were working on this morning, or I was, is over here. This arbor has hardy kiwi vine growing there. And it's not tropical kiwi, it's hardy kiwi. They're related, but different. They grow a fruit that's about the size of a real large grape or a small plum. They taste like kiwi, and they're very good. The challenge I had with this arbor was it was getting shaded, so I dropped some trees today because I needed to get at more light. So I cut down everything here this morning that was shading it, and I'm going to once I get my snowblower off my tractor, I'll come up here and finish pulling these down and take these trunks and turn them into firewood. Take the branches and chip them up into wood chips. But I've eliminated a lot of the shading on that arbor, which is going to be better for fruit production. So hopefully this year here will set and ripen a little more fruit. But what a glorious day. It's about 30 degrees, sun shining, wind blowing. Great day to work outdoors. I got the boys out here running around. But this is what I've been up to today. So if there's any other topics you folks would like me to talk about, homestead living, that sort of thing, alternative energy, want me to go in a little more detail, whatever, put it in the comment section and I'll try to get to it as best I can. And if I don't know anything about it, I'll tell you, I don't have a clue. But I know a little bit about a bunch of things. But I enjoy these talks with you. Till next time, this is Rick Theriault, your Maine Real Estate Guide, on location here in Millinocket, Maine.